I'm Kevin, and welcome to Finger Picking Cheat Codes. Today we're going to talk about 5 different tips and tricks that are going to help you become the picker you've always wanted to be. And don't forget to stick around to the end because I've got a bonus tip for you that's going to take you over the top. So join me and let's get into some finger picking. Hey, before we get started, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and click that alert bell so you know when the next video is coming your way. If you're interested in more learning resources, head over to AllForUke.com where we have a full searchable library of songs, song sheets, practice tracks, worksheets, and more. All for you, AllForUke.com. Number 1. Well, the foundation of finger picking is having good playing posture. So you want to make sure the uke is situated in a way that's going to put you in the best position to succeed. Now, in doing that, what you want to do is make sure you have the uke resting on your upper thigh, braced up against your body, and I like to keep it at about a 45-degree angle. So the headstock is just about level with my shoulder. I also want to make sure that I kind of have the face of the fretboard open and just so enough that I can see it here in front of me. Your fretting hand should be free and swinging. You don't want to have anything resting on your legs or too tucked in. You want to make sure that this arm is swinging. Now the important hand, the picking hand, should be situated right here over the sound hole. So what I like to do to kind of get in good placement here is I'll take my middle finger, reach it out to kind of the bottom corner here of the uke, and then from there is where I'm going to kind of start working on my hand position, which we'll talk about next. But something I do want to bring up here is talking about your sleeve. So it's winter here in Chicago, so I'm wearing a sweater, trying to stay warm out in the porch so we can film videos for you guys. But I don't want that sleeve to touch the strings because what that will do will make the strings sound dead if it makes any contact with anything back here. So check on that as you put your arm across and get into good playing position here. So those are some of the components just to get you started with good playing posture. Number 2. The next component to finger picking is your hand position and bracing. So the first thing I do is I have my hand over the sound hole. I'm going to take and I'm going to make a little cup shape with it. So it's almost like I take my hand and make sort of a little U shape with my fingers. So I'm kind of resting it like this, but I also want to make sure that I'm going to have a flat plane with my hand. So my wrist and the upper hand should be a nice flat plane with my hand in a U shape here. So as I put that down on the uke, I have my sleeve up and you can see this is in a nice flat plane. So what I do to keep this in position is I'm going to take my pinky and brace it onto the body of the uke, and I do this right below the sound hole. Now what that does is that's going to keep my hand in a nice position here so that when I'm finger picking over the sound hole. And the reason you want to finger pick over the sound hole is if your fingers kind of go through the strings here as you finger pick, you don't want to be over the fretboard because you're going to touch, and you don't want to be too far back here because you're going to kind of get an odd tone. So kind of the sweet spot for your hand position is right here over the U. Number 3. Well, now let's talk about the fingers, the things that are actually going to be picking the strings. So each finger is going to be assigned a name, and this comes from the school of classical guitar. So our thumb will be labeled as P, our index finger will be labeled as I, our middle finger will be labeled as M, and our ring finger, which is seldom used for uke finger picking, will be labeled as A. So if you can remember the acronym PIMA, that's how I want to refer to the fingers. So we have our hand in good position here. We've got our fretting hand in good position. We've got a nice flat palm. And then from here, we brace with the pinky and take our fingers now and rest them on the string. So my thumb, and I want to discuss the thumb a little bit here, is not going to be directly perpendicular to the strings. It's almost going to look like it's parallel to the strings. So when I pluck down on the string, I'm actually kind of going at a sideways point here. I'm not doing this. I'm actually kind of coming at it and moving my thumb in this motion here. Now, with my digits here, I want to talk about this specifically too, is when you have this nice cup position here, you can take each one of the digits and kind of just slightly pull it into your palm. So when you finger pick, you don't want to get super deep into the strings here. You really just want to kind of make contact with a little bit of the pad of your finger and maybe taking a little bit of the nail. So the more of the pad you use, the softer the tone you're going to get. The more the nail you use, kind of the more crisp and brighter, louder tone you're going to get. So if your fingernails are long, you're going to actually find that you have a little bit more contact with the nail. So I keep mine fairly short because I don't like a lot of nail clipping it, but I still get a nice little punch and a click from it as I use my fingernail here. So as I go through this, I have my pinky braced. So now let's take a closer look at our finger motion using a simple pattern here. So the pattern, I'm just going to go from inside string to outside string. So I'm going to go P, I, P, A. So I went C string, E string, G string, A string. Now as I do that, and as you do this at home, I want you to watch your hand. Now, when you're finger picking and playing a song, you're not going to watch your finger picking hand at all. You're going to watch your fretting hand. But as you're learning a pattern and as you're working on technique and really trying to be specific, I want you to watch your hand and watch for these small movements and really, really get down to the core of this here and watch these little movements. So here we go through. I'm just going to go nice and slow. I want you to pay very close attention to how my thumb is kind of coming down sideways and my index and middle finger here are really just pulling from that middle knuckle. And it's a very small motion as I pull into my palm. So as I go through here, P, I, P, A, P, I, P, A. And I'm watching my hand as I do this. And I'm doing this nice and slow. If you're digging the sound of my uke, head over to AllForUke.com/shop. You can have a Kala ukulele for yourself. When you buy your Kala ukulele through AllForUke, you're supporting us, and we really appreciate it. Make sure you check it out. Concerts, sopranos, tenors, baritones, a wide selection of accessories, capos, and more. All for you, AllForUke.com/shop. Number 4. So staying with the pattern that we just discussed, now we're going to take that pattern and we're going to break it down a little bit and talk about it relative to time signature. So time signatures can vary 4/4, 3/4, 6/8. Well, the pattern that we just discussed is a pattern that we would use in 4/4 or common time. So anytime that you come across a piece of music that's in 4/4, technically you could use this finger picking pattern P, I, P, A. And the way that you would count this pattern is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So as you play that, to get more consistent with that timing, the best thing that you can do is put a metronome to it. So I'm going to do a little exercise here, nice and slow using this pattern, and I'm going to verbally count along with the metronome so you can kind of hear how this plays out. So we'll do this at 60 beats per minute. Get myself in good position. Start kind of nodding with the metronome tempo here, and then I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So now we'll take that tempo up a little bit and you can hear how this plays out more towards about 80 BPM. So again, start feeling that tempo. I'm just playing with open strings here. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Number 5. Number 5 is super important, and that is tone clarity and expression. These are the things that if you're using all of the right techniques along the way, playing with good timing, your tone is already going to be a lot better, but tone really refers to making sure that all of your notes are ringing out nice and clear, they're singing, they're decaying at the same rate, and they all sound very even as you play. So you don't want to play with a very heavy thumb and then your fingers are very light. When you play this pattern that we've been using throughout, you can hear that all of these notes are kind of decaying at the same rate. And I'm just going to hold an F chord here as I do this as an example. And if you listen, you can hear all of these notes kind of have a resonance to them and they decay at the same time. If I were to play that with kind of poor tone, the tone that you're hearing there is happening because I'm kind of pulling at the strings too hard. So when I do that, that's kind of making the instrument intonate a little bit out of tune, and then you're going to hear that kind of sound that doesn't really sound so pleasant to the ear. So the next aspect to this is dynamics. So we talk about dynamics with strumming, and that means that you're varying the volume. What I'm going to do now is kind of crescendo a finger picking pattern, which means I'm going to start at a lower volume and raise that volume up to kind of bring the intensity up without speeding up the finger picking. Rather, I'm just going to bring up the volume of it by kind of picking a little bit more intensely as I go. So I'll start off nice and soft. And then I'm going to start raising it. And then I'll bring it back down. So dynamics is something that you can do to kind of make the pattern have a little bit more interest to it. And the other thing that you can do is adding a little bit of emphasis to. Having a hard time getting that word emphasis out, but I'm emphasizing that using emphasis on specific notes can also make the pattern sound a little more interesting. So we talked about tone of having a very even decay, but as you add emphasis to a note, sometimes you want one of those notes to kind of stand out amongst the group. So in this case, I'm just going to play the first note, which is on the C string here, a little bit heavier than I play the other notes. So you'll hear that note kind of stand out and the other ones play. So here's emphasizing the first note of the pattern. You can hear that ringing as I'm playing it. I'm going to switch to a C chord. And you're really hearing that droning of the C note as I do this. But those other notes are definitely involved. So you could add emphasis to any note. Typically, you'll find it on the first and third or the second and fourth if you're going to use an emphasis, but try experimenting a little bit as you go with some of the patterns to kind of bring a little bit more life to them. So using dynamics and expression can add a little bit of cool factor to your finger picking. Well, thank you for sticking around for the bonus tip. The bonus tip is this: your fretting hand matters. So we've been talking all about our picking hand this entire time, but as you're playing chords, you might still notice that even if you have really nice technique happening here with your finger picking hand, that you might still hear some dead notes or kind of ill tone coming out of the instrument. Well, that might be because of the finger pressure that you're applying here. Now, when you're playing and you're strumming, sometimes those little notes that you might not be pressing down hard enough can get disguised or lost in the mix because you're strumming. But when you start finger picking or arpeggiating these chords, now every note matters, and every note that you're holding down here matters as well. So I'm just going to kind of show you what a mistake would sound like, but if I wasn't holding down my middle finger hard enough and I played through this pattern, you hear that kind of dead note coming through. But if I make sure that I have proper pressure, now that note sings out. all of the notes of the chord sing out. And as you get into bar chords, more technical chords, it becomes even more important that you do that. So the bonus tip is check your fretting hand as you go too. That will also play factor in your tone. Last but not least, make sure that you're smiling, breathing, and you're relaxed as you finger pick. It's very easy when you're hyper-focused here on your hands to kind of play with a lot of tension. So take a breather every once in a while, kind of let those hands shake out, get yourself relaxed, and really just kind of keep coming back to these techniques as you go. Well, thanks so much for learning the fingerpicking cheat codes with me. Please let me know, where are you playing uke around the world, and what are some of your favorite fingerpicking patterns or songs that you have played with fingerpicking patterns? Leave those in the comments below. Also want to mention, go over to AllForUke.com. I have put together some exercises to work on fingerpicking, and I have an entire series dedicated to fingerpicking that goes for standard and baritone. You can check that out on the YouTube channel and AllForUke.com. My name is Kevin. Thank you so much for learning with me. I'll see you next time.
Let's get